Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 5:13 p.m. Washington State Time. Today is Monday, April 13, 2020. I am Master Thich Thong Lai. Today, I like to spend some free time answering emails from fellow Buddhist followers in the country who are asking me to answer questions. I would like to invite all my dear fellow Buddhist followers at home and abroad to follow up on these emails related to the political situation of Vietnamese and Chinese Communist Party related to the Chinese virus. Dear Venerable, we are some Buddhist followers whom are living in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. Currently, we are under an isolation order of anti-pandemic. Therefore, we cannot go outside. We decided to take a risk to send this email to Venerable to ask some of our questions. First of all, recently, there was a known source in the country informed that there was a clash between armed fishing vessels of Vietnam and Chinese. These were armed Chinese and Vietnamese militia boats masquerading at fishing boats. The two sides had a shooting in the Eastern Sea area near the Spratly Islands. We are curious about the story behind this because for a long time, the Vietnamese Communist Party has long been a Chinese henchman and doesn't dare to close the 6 border gates nor made any decision against it. However, recently, the Vietnamese Foreign Minister Pham Binh Minh has sent a complaint to the United Nations alleging that the Chinese naval had sunk a Vietnamese fisherman's fishing boat and strongly condemned the Chinese Communist invasion in Vietnam territorial waters. Were the Vietnamese Communists out of their minds? Because they used the media warfare and dared to let their army disguise as fishing boats to retaliate against the Chinese militia boats that disguised as fishing vessels to invade Vietnam's territorial waters. Since you are living overseas, what do you think about this situation? Please let us know so we can prepare for the coming dark days in Vietnam. I wish you good health. Well, in this question, these Buddhist followers stated that a wave in the Vietnamese government, in the foreign ministry, including the spokeswoman Tu Hoang, also spoke up to condemn China. And also in the United States, there was a legal document against the invasion of Chinese ships to sink a Vietnamese fisherman's boat in Vietnam territorial waters in the South China Sea. In addition, Pham Binh Minh publicly sent an appeal to the United Nations to condemn China for invading and infringing upon sovereignty and sinking fishing vessels of the Vietnamese fishermen in the territory of Vietnam. Now, these Buddhist followers asked the question whether it was true or false. I have spoken with some of my American friends, and they say there are 2 scenarios. The first scenario is that the U.S. intelligence agents in Vietnam, they were successfully connected with people who still have nationalistic spirits and those who do not want to be slaves for Chinese communists and did not want the Chindu Treaty. So they bravely stood up, and for the first time, there was a written document by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Communist Parties of Vietnam accusing the Chinese Communists of invading its sovereignty and sinking Vietnamese fishermen boats at the United Nations Forum. These are some of my friends' theories. It's the American intelligence agency that worked very well. They finally connected with the Vietnamese people who were working in the government of Vietnam but don't want to become Chinese henchmen. And the second scenario was just a play instructed by Xi Jinping. When I talked to a group of American friends in the United Nations, they gave me the opposite opinion. They said that was just a show directed by Xi Jinping. Xi instructed the Vietnamese government and the Vietnamese communists to do so in order to create a situation for the Chinese communists to have an excuse to attack the remaining partly and partial islands that are still occupied by Vietnamese Navy. Xi Jinping did this in order to relieve anger of some Chinese Communist Party members who have requested that Xi Jinping must take action responding to the provocation of the United States. When Xi Jinping's naval force was exercising 80 nautical miles in the Southern Sea, the United States told Taiwan that there would be a U.S. destroyer that would enter the Taiwanese Strait area in 2 days, passing through the exercise area of the Chinese naval force. Tsai Ing-wen announced that Xi Jinping has to stop the drill immediately when the U.S. destroyer is in the Taiwan Strait. Taiwan publicly declared, in 2 days, Xi Jinping can practice their drills, but U.S. destroyers would pass the training area. Xi Jinping didn't take any action in retaliation, and that caused some of the members of the Chinese Communist Party to become angry. At the moment, everyone knows all of the media networks and famous U.S. Facebookers are analyzing the hot situation in Taiwan, and the United States is provoking a Chinese communist to fire first. In my point of view, the question why Vietnam has an anti-diplomatic campaign about the Chinese communists invading sovereignty and having militia masquerading at fishing boats to fire at the Chinese militia vessels. This is a conflict of military and diplomatic interests. Here are some answers for my American friends. They said that there are two scenarios. One was that the U.S. intelligence has been able to connect with patriots who are working in the Vietnamese government and speak up against China. The second scenario was Xi Jinping play that ordered the Vietnamese to have opposition. A play against China so that China would have an excuse to teach Vietnam a second lesson in order to transfer the frustration of the Chinese Communist Party members. In their eyes, Xi Jinping cowardly avoided to challenge the U.S. Navy in the Taiwan Strait when the U.S. destroyer passed through. Xi Jinping did not dare to speak out, oppose, or fire back. So that's the opinion from the two sources. I don't know anything. I just answer what I know. Now let's get to the second question. We are some Buddhist followers who are living in Da Nang City. We often follow all of your YouTube clips. We have a curiosity that Captain Crozier, who was relieved from his duty due to the lack of seeking sensitive information, which was the route of the U.S. aircraft carrier Roosevelt. He unilaterally sent an email to ask the U.S. Navy Secretary to allow him to bring the aircraft carrier Roosevelt to dock at San Diego for treating 6 sailors. After visiting Vietnam for a week, the Secretary of the Navy from the United States Navy decided to dismiss Captain Crozier. However, recently it was surprising that President Donald Trump reinstated Captain Crozier, and he returned to command the battleship Roosevelt in the Eastern Sea while the Marine Minister wanted to resign. We stayed in Da Nang and did not fully understand the situation, why this conflict occurred. Could you please take some time to talk about this? We are in We are Vietnamese in this country. We listen to your news and put our faith in your Facebook account. And we wish you good health. The truth is, President Donald Trump made a speech to criticize the Marine Minister for being naive and believing the unrealistic report of the Vietnamese Communist government. At the time the aircraft carrier Roosevelt anchored in Da Nang, the fake report stated less than 150 people were infected with the coronavirus and no deaths. President Donald Trump had a telegram rebuking the Marine Minister who had such an important position in the U.S. Navy but was naive, trusting the deciphered report of the Vietnamese Communist government. And because of Donald Trump reprimand the Marine Minister, he decided to resign. President Trump himself reinstated Captain Crozier, returning to command on the Roosevelt aircraft carrier. You should know that there was nothing wrong with the aircraft carrier visiting Da Nang port, because it is part of the campaign to protect the Eastern Sea and warn Xi Jinping. But because the Marine Minister was acting lighthearted and he trusted the deceitful report numbers of infection in Vietnam, under 200 cases, and there were no deaths. The Roosevelt aircraft carrier docked at 7 nautical miles from the Da Nang coast. People in the country can use binoculars or the naked eye to see the vessels. However, a cruiser took several staff ashore in Qua Nam province of Da Nang City. These sailors went to perform and visit some charities. Due to the inability to keep track of the true numbers of reports, but to rely on false reports of the Vietnamese government, 5,000 U.S. sailors were infected with the coronavirus. Soon after that, the Marine Minister dismissed Captain Crozier. The President of the United States delivered a speech criticizing the naivety of believing the number that the Vietnamese Communists reported to the United Nations, because the number of infected people was just too little. The President did not dismiss the Marine Minister, but he found himself irresponsible, creating infection on the aircraft carrier, and he resigned himself. At the same time, Captain Crozier was reinstated and continued to lead the aircraft carrier. So that was a contradiction, because the naive Marine Minister believed in the false report of the Vietnamese Communists that there was no deaths and too few people infected, which President Trump stated that the Marine Minister believed innocently. The President reinstated the captain, and the Marine Minister found himself working irresponsibly, so he resigned. That was my personal opinion. I now will read to you the next question. Dear Venerable, we are a group of people who are living in the United States. Recently, we were surfing online and went by the information about the North Korean government personnel changes in the Politburo. We don't know if this is real or fake news. Inevitably, we observe the changes in personnel in North Korea for the next 24 hours. We know that, Venerable, you often follow closely and carefully. If you have any information on this issue, can you please update us? Signed, a group of engineers who used to attend the short-term monkhood of Venerable Thich Thong Lai. We are wishing you all good health during this flu pandemic season. I confirm that some of my American friends in the United States said that there will be some personnel changes in the North Korean government political. There will be a replacement between 8 to 10 members of the North Korean government. I don't know exactly who will be replaced. However, I think this is the correct news, and you will have to wait for another 2 days for the television network to release this information. Since we are on this topic, I also want to make it clear that my female disciple who married a Chinese husband, they are both in Hong Kong waiting for their visa to come to the United States. She said that the change in the North Korean party will also be accompanied by a change in the political party of the Chinese Communists. Those are the two things that you need to be aware of. You probably know that ever since Kim Jong-un became president of North Korea, he has ridded many Chinese Communist agents who infiltrated the North Korean government. You can clearly see this indeed real news, which was questioned by a group of the engineers. Since it was confirmed by my female disciples, who is married to a Chinese husband, it truly is true. North Korea will leave the orbit of the Chinese Communists, and when Xi Jinping goes to war with other free countries in the world, he will be alone in this war. I guarantee to you that North Korea has been the favorite child of the Chinese Communists for a long time. Its survival up to now to maintain a Communist party like the Vietnamese Communist Party because of this support of Xi Jinping. If indeed North Korea now changes its personnel in the political ministry and the Chinese Communists also change its personnel in the Chinese Communist government political ministry, then it is a major change and war will be implemented as the number of Americans die over 20,000 and over 600,000 are infected. The Americans sent their troops to war to liberate Europe from the Nazis. They sent their troops into the South China Seas, to the Philippines, to Guam Island region, to liberate these islands from Japanese colonists. They would rather die in war. It's not as bad as having innocent Americans die because of the Chinese virus. This creates a wave of anger in the Americans. And I want to tell you that in Massachusetts, there was a Vietnamese couple who owned a warehouse. Last November to December, some Chinese and Chinese companies brought all masks and medical supplies to prevent infectious disease and stored them in the warehouse of these Vietnamese couple. However, after the outbreak spread, these Chinese did not vacate the warehouse due to the no import or export goods to China policy of President Donald Trump. The Vietnamese couple called these Chinese people who bought the mask in December to buy these masks. There was a lot of masks and medical supplies, and these Vietnamese couple informed the U.S. government to donate these masks to help the city of New York fight against the coronavirus Wuhan. The event had been made public on the media network for several days now. This showed that the Chinese Communists had a campaign and prepared to attack the United States with germicidal weapons because in December they brought all the masks in the U.S. and leased a lot of warehouse. This Vietnamese couple owned a warehouse, finally brought the medical supplies stored them from November to December, were more than a few dozen percent behind in the warehouse. They contacted the Chinese owner who was in China. The owner said that because of the embargo tax, he could not transport the mask. The Vietnamese American couple brought these masks and donated them to the U.S. government. There is no shortage of masks in the United States, but because before Chinese virus outbreak, the mask was only sold to dentists and doctors to the nail industry. The nail technician use the mask when they do nails care to prevent chemical pollution. As a small market It was a small market, so the profit was very little. A box of masks was selling for only a few dollars. Therefore, all U.S. companies have mask factories in China, and China knows this well. China was prepared to attack the United States. These evidence has been collected by the United States Federal Bureau Investigation Agency. One day, these evidence will be brought to international courts to claim compensation from China. These evidence are very comprehensive. Now, the South China Sea situation is hot. In my opinion, the Americans want the war to be fought in the South China Sea, but at the Taiwan's Strait, not the Spratly Islands, because Taiwan's military power is very strong. Taiwan's economical and financial strength are also very strong. In the end, Taiwan will reconnect with the rebel forces from within the country to end communist regime. Why haven't I mentioned anyone in Vietnam lately? Because Vietnam now has nothing more to say. It is a province of Chinese communists. The Vietnamese Communist Party will still exist or not, and that all depends on the fate of Xi Jinping, which is counting every minute and hour. The gun can fire at any time. The way I see it, the United States wants the war to happen in Taiwan Strait so they can end the war in China's mainland and liberate it. Taiwan will take over mainland China. The Chinese communists want war in the South China Sea at the Spratly Islands, or in Philippines, or in Malaysia, because fighting there will calm the dissatisfaction among the Chinese people and the military commanders. The Chinese Communist Party members will no longer oppose Xi Jinping, but will stand with him to fight the United States and other free countries. The Communist Chinese have no other way. Without fighting, it will have civil war. Fighting so it can be defeated, but losing will help the Chinese communists retain the communist regime, but only if the war happens in the South China Sea, or at Spratly Islands, or at the Philippines archipelago. Fighting against Taiwan, the Communist Party will lose and its regime will be gone. So it is hard for the United States to contain its temper. War can happen at any time. The people in the country should prepare food. I spoke with some of my friends, especially the Americans. I asked them who is in control of Vietnam. They smiled at me and said that they see there is no one controlling right now. All the commands given by Prime Minister Nguyen Xuan Phuc was now executed by his subordinates. For example, Nguyen Xuan Phuc ordered not to export rice to prevent the famine because the Mekong Delta is suffering from severe drought. The Ministry of Industry and Trade of Vietnam still silently exported 400,000 tons of rice within 4 hours. So in Vietnam, no one is really in control at the moment. You can clearly see this because the resolution given by Prime Minister Nguyen Xuan Phuc to the district level officials, but no one complied. The Ministry of other branches also did not obey orders from Prime Minister Nguyen Xuan Phuc. These were responses from my American friends when I asked them who the real leader in Vietnam is at the current time. The Chinese communists rules Vietnam, but Vietnamese like Nguyen Xuan Phuc and Deputy Prime Minister have absolutely no respect from the provincial and the district personnel. So Vietnam is now really in the 12th warlord era. They are waiting day and night for the regime to collapse. Those sides with the Chinese communists, they are observing the day when Xi Jinping gets dethroned, and they will run away. They are leaning towards the people and on the American aids. They are also waiting for the day when Xi Jinping collapses, and they will shake hands with the United States to dissolve the Vietnamese communist regime. Please listen to me. People in the country should protect your lives and do not listen to what the communists say but look at what the communists do. Please do not trust the results of the coronavirus published by the Communist Party of Vietnam, but look at those rare images posted on the internet. The Vietnamese are dying in masses. Once again, I state that I am a Vietnamese. I don't want our compatriots to die. I only want the Vietnamese Communist Party to die. That's my policy. Our enemies are the communists who are henchmen for Chinese communists, who are sucking the blood of the people. My enemies are not 95 million Vietnamese people who are defenseless. Respectfully yours, when I have some free time, I will continue to update the situation regarding Vietnam, the Chinese communists, and the Chinese virus. Respectfully yours.